I am going to begin us now with a word of introduction of Lucy Moore. It was a number of years ago that Lucy sat on a wall outside of a church in Cowes Plain in the UK, where her husband was the vicar, and talked to people who were going down the street and discovered that there was a need in the community that could be answered with some creativity. And so with creativity and courage and a bunch of people coming together, Lucy is credited with founding the first congregation with a messy church, recognizing the mess of people's lives and the need for us to provide safe, creative, and supportive space for one another. And Messy Church began with an evolution of what are these core values that we have, and how can those be lived out to share Christ's ministry in the world. And so with a strong biblical base and a strong empathy for people, Messy Church went from 1 month to another, to the story being told, to now thousands of churches around the world holding true to these values and this vision of Messy Church. And so the number of lives that have been impacted by a single conversation is a number we can't even begin to imagine, because it has been a seed of God's love that has been sown and nurtured by Lucy and by her team. And so with great thanks to Lucy for her time, her dedication, and her presence with us. And good evening to you, because I know that it is coming towards the end of the evening for you, or the end of the day for you. And Lucy has told us that tonight there is a Messy Masterclass that immediately follows her session. And so she won't be here for Neil and for Linny and beyond. It'll be the middle of the night, but we will see her again tomorrow. And without any further ado, our time should be yours, Lucy, as we celebrate the connection of community. So thank you for joining us, and let's turn our attention to Lucy. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Carol. Brilliant introduction. Look, it's such a joy to be with you. I'm gutted. I'm really gutted not to be in Canada. I'm really peeved not to be with you, as it were, in the same place, because there's nothing like it, is there? But this is such a privilege as well, and wonderful to be with you like this. So thank you for inviting me. I'm going to get the apologies out of the way for a start. It is about 5:30 in the afternoon here, so that's normal kind of finishing work time. So my brain may give up halfway through the talk, but just put kind comments in the chat and we'll be fine. We'll be fine. The other thing is the light is fading. It's getting on for evening because we're hitting autumn now. So I've got these two spotlights either side of my head, and I'm feeling a bit as if I'm in some interrogation chamber. So if I get a little bit neurotic, just bear with. And the last apology is, one tries to be professional, frankly, one tries, but one's dog is hardwired for 5:30 is when you finish work, and that's when I get tickles. So there is a snoring dog next to me in abeyance at the moment. But if you hear squeals and wails like a soul in torment, then it'll just be me trying to keep my canine friend down, Minnie, down. Well, Carol has asked me to talk for about half an hour about play and connecting people, rebuilding people through play. But I'm going to start in perhaps an unusual place. I'm going to start with clothes. One thing that those who know and love me would say about me would not be, oh, Lucy is a really snappy dresser. I don't know about you, but I cannot get excited about what I wear. And I wonder what you've put on. I see a lot of people have cut their cameras off, so we can't actually see. And everyone else is sort of slowly altering the camera so that only their head is showing. So we can't actually tell what everybody's wearing. I wonder what you've put on today to come to this Zoom and do the other things that you need to do today. I wonder how you felt when you put on the clothes that you put on this morning. Whether it was just whatever was nearest, whatever wasn't covered in grub, whatever was warmest, perhaps. I wonder if it was something that lifted your spirits or that means something. I noticed Susie was wearing an orange T-shirt, and Carol was explaining to me only last week about the significance of an orange T-shirt and the Reconciliation Day. And obviously her necklace was something really special and significant for her. So I wonder if you're wearing anything significant. I mean, if you feel like it, pop it into the chat, unless it's a really intimate garment that might embarrass us all. But, you know, if you're wearing something significant, do just share that in the chat as we go along. And please do, during this half hour, please do use the chat, mostly for my sake, because you are kind people. And it's really difficult talking on a Zoom call when you're used to talking in a room full of people who smile at you and laugh and occasionally write something down as if you said something useful. And on Zoom, you just get this silence, a bit like speaking in a church where everyone just stares at you and you don't get any sort of encouragement. So thank you, Mark and Jane, for listening intently. I really appreciate that. Keep it coming, keep it coming. I need all the help I could get. I've got two things, two garments of significance. One is this that I've got on my lap at the moment. This ought to mean something to you Canadians. It was a present, years ago, Carol. A present from Gail and Carol when they came to visit the UK and kindly brought this gorgeous blanket. It's something to do with Trading Post. I can't remember what, but Hudson's Bay blanket, that's the bunny. And it's been a complete godsend now that we're living in the north of England. And when I say it's cold, you know, for you, you'd be wearing bikinis, but for us, it's chilly up here in the Peak District of England. So having an extra blanket to wrap myself in has been a real godsend. And the other garment that I had to get out recently is this. This is my messy church apron. And for all through lockdown, obviously, we've not been able to do messy church. It's been, it sounds awful in bits of Canada too, but in the UK, it's been miserable. It's been really, really miserable. It's been a time of miserableness and loss and trauma and grumpiness and being shut away and being just being sad. And not being able to do messy church has been a real pain, like a literal pain. And we moved up here about a year ago. And this month, right at the start of October, we started our first brand new messy church here. And I was able to get my apron out again for the first time. And there was something about getting that garment out of the cupboard and it standing for so much joy and fellowship and fun and church as it can be. It's it was in itself, it was a lift to me. It was a boost. I thought it might be worth just taking one moment to just explain what Messy Church is, in case some people here have just kind of maybe come to the wrong Zoom and are wondering what's going on. But Messy Church it's usually once a month, and it's a way of being church for families. And it usually looks something like a very warm welcome at the door, because people that might be there in a church for the first time ever. And then there's an hour or so of activities on a biblical theme, and lots of different things to do, just spread out around your hall or your church or wherever you're meeting. Of science activities, games, crafts, stupid things to make, stupid things to do, just off the wall fun. And you can go round and do as many or as few as you like. And they're for adults as well as children. They're designed for families and others to come along and enjoy together. Then after about an hour of doing these activities to explore the Bible, then you come together for a celebration with story, song, and prayer. And that's everybody together as the gathered family of God. And then you have a sit-down meal together, which is huge fun, really tricky to do during pandemic times. But messy churches are finding ways of doing it safely. Eating together as an expression of being family, being clan together, is something really, really significant and important, and a first step towards a sacramental understanding. And it just does so much without us even trying. All we do is cook a few things and God does the rest. So that's really the shape of a messy church. But I just thought I'd throw that in case anyone was wondering what was going on. I was on my apron. That's where we were up to. We were thinking about clothes. And I've got a challenge for you. If you haven't found the chat and you're not quite sure how to find it, you could usefully use it now. Go to the bottom of your page and wiggle your mouse around. Go to the bottom of your screen, wiggle your mouse around, and either you'll see a button called chat, or you might see 3 little buttons that say more or something like that, and click on those, and you'll probably find a speech bubble that says chat somewhere in there. Of course, if you're on an iPad, it's all in the wrong place, so we'll leave that. But I challenge you, ladies, gentlemen, everybody, I challenge you in the chat in the next 30 minutes, 30 seconds, to try to put in as many Bible stories as you can that have an item of clothing as significant. So can you think of Bible stories where some item of clothing is part of that story? Okay, and Aviva has got us off to a great start. Joseph and the colourful coat. Jane and Mark are there simultaneously. Oh, Job, yes. What a brilliant one. Didn't think about Job. John the Baptist with his leather garments and hairiness. Or the man who touched Jesus. Yeah, the woman who touched Jesus. Was it woman? Man who touched Jesus. Anyway, someone touched Jesus's robe. Well, Moses had to take his sandals off. Joseph's coat. Lydia, of course, Lydia, genius. Bartimaeus. Oh, now there's an interesting one. Oh, I can't think why Bartimaeus off the top of my head, but someone will explain to me. The hem of Jesus' garment. Yes. John the Baptist, Jesus' garment. Oh, Elijah's mantle. Brilliant. Oh, yes. Excellent. Oh, Jesus washing his feet. Yes, I haven't, all of these ones I haven't thought of. Dividing Christ's clothing at the cross, brilliant. Bartimaeus threw off his beggar's cloak. Yes, Laura, yes, you're right. You're so right. Oh, angels. Oh, angels in shining clothes. Yes, they're often described as wearing something shiny, the ones at the tomb. And Samuel, yes, with his clothes that Hannah made for him. Robes of righteousness. Oh, well, we're getting deep now. Adam and Eve after the fall. Yes, absolutely. And baby Jesus wrapped in swaddling clothes. Gay, thank you for bringing that one in. Oh, Goliath and his armor. Hurrah. Yes, and David and his armor that he borrowed from Saul as well. Solomon, Dorcas, who did so much sewing. I like to think she knitted. Don't you like to think she knitted and crocheted? I have her down as a knitter. Marvelous. Let's stop. There are so many. Thank you for that. Thank you for putting down those very significant stories. Because I want to think about clothes today, and the way that clothes are really can have huge meaning and huge significance. And one thing that nobody mentioned was the prodigal son, the cloak of the father in that story, and the ring that he had put on his finger, the way that God provides clothing, like he did for Adam and Eve, as somebody mentioned, to make it possible for connections to happen, to make it possible for reconciliation to happen, for people to come back together with each other and with God. It's a really fascinating theme to follow through. And I'm really glad that Gay mentioned baby Jesus in swaddling clothes, because isn't that a beautiful juxtaposition between the Adam and Eve story, where God provided clothes for humanity, and God choosing to become a baby and needing humanity to provide clothes for him. I think that's just such a moving thing, and especially when you tie that in with the strips that were wrapped around Jesus's body after his crucifixion, it starts getting a little bit mind-blowing. So lots of really significant threads, and one thread running through the Bible that I've been fascinated by is the way that God provides wedding clothes for people who are lamenting. And I think that's really significant for us at the moment. We are certainly in the UK, and from what I hear from Carol in our conversations, in many parts of Canada as well, we're like people at a funeral. It's as if we're all dressed in dark colours. We're at a funeral. We've got all that sadness going on for a funeral. And God offers us clothes for a wedding to wear instead, clothes of celebration. And if Graham could bring up the first slide, that would be great. Thanks, Graham. I don't know if you can see that. If it's too tiny, just go to the top corner of your screen and change it to speaker view, would it be? Something like that. Yeah, go to change it to speaker view, and you'll be able to see the slide on Graham's screen there a little bit bigger. Here we've got the Messy Church values, and the shape of a Messy Church will change from Edmonton to Winnipeg. It will be different wherever you go. But the values of a Messy Church are always the same, and they're these 5 values that are like the DNA of a Messy Church. It's centered around Christ. There's creativity, there's hospitality. It's for all ages. And celebration is one of the values of Messy Church. And it's one of the values that's hardest for people to get their head around. I really like it because it keeps reminding me, especially in churchy circles, it reminds me not to get too hung up on all the ologies, all the, well, what's your theology? What's your ecclesiology? What's your eschatology? What's your missiology? And you get so ground down by the deep thinking that you forget to have fun. You forget to have joy in church. It reminds me that joy is there, right at the heart of who we are as a church. It's meant to be fun. And it's worth pausing and just reflecting on this, because over the years, we've come in for so much stick. And I don't mean Susie's lovely story sticks. We've come in for so much stick about having fun in church, as if this is something really shocking and dreadful and shameful and unchristian. Whereas joy is one of the fruits of the Spirit. We should be joyful people. Yes, there's always a time for lament. Yes, of course, there's a time for stillness and for solemnity. But the problem is that the church has this reputation of being boring, which must be the opposite of joy and playfulness and fun. And so those of us in messy church kind of feel that we have to almost push the pendulum a bit far to the extreme to make up for the reputation of church being dull. Because who wants to belong to something that's dull? It might not be dull, but that's its reputation. And it's really hard to get people through the door if they think that it's going to be boring. So messy church is fun, and celebration and joy are part of that, just having a good time together before God in a church. One messy church started again this month, and they shared their post on Facebook. And listen to these words that they wrote on their post as they shared these lovely photos of a church full of people. The church was buzzing with energy and life. The church was buzzing with energy and life. Isn't that glorious? Isn't that just such a wonderful thing to celebrate in itself, and an expression of celebration too, of energy, life, all these growing, brilliant things that that are part of what church can be and should be, is why we celebrate communion. It's celebration it's about marking things. It's about saying you matter to people who perhaps have been knocked about by life and told that they don't matter. In our messy churches, we say, you do matter. We notice you. We want to spend time with you. We want to sit with your children. We want to play together with you. You matter to us. And it's about celebrating who God is and what God's done. So we always have a Bible story at the heart of Messy Church, because it's a wonderful way of celebrating the person that God is, and the things that God has done. There are so many. I think we could do Messy Churches till the cows come home and not finish celebrating what God's done. Sometimes I walk into a messy church and it sounds a bit, does this sound really twee and naff? But, okay, well, it might sound a bit twee, but it's true nonetheless. For me, walking into a messy church is a little bit like walking into the kingdom of heaven. There's something about all those ages having a great time, smiling, or being very, very intently engaged in what they're doing together under God, with lots of food. And that just feels so much like the kingdom of heaven to me. I just love that expression of what a messy church is doing, that abundance of things to do, things to eat, of people's love overflowing in the conversations and the welcome. It's lovely seeing people come as they are, not dressing up, not putting on a front, but just coming as they are in their school uniforms or in their onesies or, or just in what they've been gardening in that day. And it's as if everybody understands that it doesn't matter what you wear. It's not like that parable of the wedding banquet where the owner of the banquet says, "Oi, you're not wearing the right things. Out, out, out the place of wailing and gnashing of teeth." It's much more like the parable of the prodigal son, where God says, I'll provide everything you need. I'll wrap you up in my cloak. I'll give you my ring from my finger. It's a place of provision and abundance and glorifulness. Glorifulness, is that a word? No, it's not. Gloriousness. There we go. Gloriousness. I am going somewhere with this clothing thing. And you've all got pen and paper there, which is lovely. And I'm going to invite you to play for a minute. Good heavens, is that the time already? Carol, I'm blithering on. Look, I've got pages and pages to get through.
It's A-okay. You easily have another 30 minutes to use. A-okay. Just all good.
I'm so undisciplined. Right. Okay, we will still play. If you were children, I wouldn't need to say this, but I will say it because we're adults and we've been taught that we are rubbish at art and that we can't possibly draw anything because we're rubbish. And I want you to just forget all that you've been told about you being rubbish at art. You are made in God's image. You are a creative person. And more importantly, perhaps, nobody's going to see what you draw. So it doesn't matter. Just let it go. So all I'd like you to do is doodle as I witter on. Just doodle on your piece of paper. No one is going to see it except you and whoever you want to show it to. But this is just a little way of stepping into an idea from an old part of the Bible. So just doodle. It might be a comic strip. It might be one picture that just gradually gets added to. Just nothing is wrong. You can't go wrong with this. You're absolutely right, whatever you do. Okay, so here we go. Do you have Amazon in Canada? Okay, thank you. You do. So do we. So much Amazon. Right, you've been delivered an Amazon box. An Amazon box has arrived. You didn't order it. You don't know what it is, and it's arrived and you've taken delivery of it. There it is. And you pick it up and you take it to your table and you plonk it on the table and you think, oh my word, what is this? I wonder how big it is in your imagination. Are we talking a teeny weeny box? Are we talking a huge box? Completely up to you. And you get your scissors or your knife and you cut it open, that sticky bit over the top, and you lift off the layers and layers and layers and layers of packaging, and you pull out what's inside and your mouth drops open. There is only one way to describe this. It's a garment of praise. I'll say that again in case the sound cut out. It's a garment of praise. Oh, I wonder what you're seeing in your imagination. What sort of a garment is the garment of praise that you've pulled out of that Amazon box? Just go with the first idea that comes to you. Draw it. Is it a hat? Is it a cloak? Is it a dress? Maybe it's a set of dungarees. Maybe it's underwear. Maybe it's a suit of armor. Is it every day? Is it fancy dress? What's it made of? I wonder if you could scribble that on. What colour is it? Or perhaps it's multicoloured, this garment of praise. Is it just knocked up in a sweatshop by the tens of thousands, or has it been hand-tailored by an expert, specifically for you? As you lift it up and poke around at it, are there little details that you didn't notice at first sight? Are there little dangly bits, perhaps? Embroidery, beads, little, I don't know, leather patches? Is there anything, as you lift it up and turn it over, is there anything on the other side? Anything underneath that you hadn't seen the first time? What does it feel like, this garment of praise? And most of all, do you want to put it on? Is it like you know the feeling you get with a tea cozy when you're in the house on your own and you just have to put it on your head if nobody else is watching? Is it that feeling that you just want to try it on? Or would you like to try it on, but I'm sorry, you just don't have the energy? Are you looking at it and thinking, oh, it's not going to fit me. I'm not the right size for this. Or do you just feel like popping it back in the box and putting the lid on and sending it back without doing anything with it? Or do you try it on and twirl? Just acknowledge, just privately to God, how you feel about this garment of praise that you've been sent. Do carry on doodling and making your garment of praise even more beautiful as we carry on. But isn't it interesting that a garment of praise is something that we can choose to put on? It's offered to us, but it's something that goes on from the outside. I think some things of God changes from the inside out, and some things changes from the outside in. Be quiet, Minnie. And this is the passage that we're looking at today. So Graham, if we could have the next slide. It's from Isaiah 61. And the significant bit is, I wanted to put the whole thing up because I hate just plucking things out of context. But it's the little bit at the end that I really want to focus on. God has anointed me to bestow on them a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. Isn't that beautiful? That God has sent Jesus. Jesus took it as his manifesto. God has sent Jesus to give people a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. There's hope, there is joy, there is celebration, there is a kingdom of wonderfulness to be part of. And we can take that for us today, I think, as we seek to serve the families in our context. He has anointed us to give people a chance to put on a garment of praise instead of this spirit of despair that's hanging over so many of us at the moment with all the losses of the last couple of years. So hold on to that thought. Jesus took it to heart. He really did make that his manifesto. He healed the people that he met. He was like a kind of a salesman, if you like, handing out free goods, handing out garments of praise and saying, try it on for size, see if this heals you, see if this brings you back into society. See if this is something to do with reconciliation between you and other people or between you and God. Does this work for you? And isn't it lovely that in the Gospels, the people who took the garment of praise and tried it on and found it fitted were the people from the edges, the people who were the outcasts, the little people, the Zacchaeuses of this world. Whereas the folk who were already nicely clothed in their significant clothing that showed how religious they were, or how learned they were, or how rich they were, they found it much harder to put on the clothes that Jesus was offering them. So I see this as a huge sign of hope for the people that we're trying to reach in our messy churches, the people who have been kicked about by life. Play. Graham, flick me through the next few slides, if you would. Just have a look at these slides. We have had so much fun in messy churches over the years. And don't let anybody say to you that it's just fluffy fun. It's just a waste of time. It's just entertainment, because the things that we have made, and Graham, if you just keep on running them through. This came from the Young Leaders Zoom, an interesting view of the resurrection. The lost sheep. Oh dear. Keep them coming, Graham. And I think this was probably Paul or Silas in prison, but it could have been somebody on crutches. I dread to think what we were doing on this occasion. A game of Skittles. The insane sheep that we've made over the years with all those googly eyes. Oh dear. So many things happening. All this play, and just pause on that side, Graham, because this is the most recent one. It doesn't look as insane as the others. All those moments of laughter and joy and people coming together, wetting themselves because things were so funny as they did them together. Those are not irreverent moments. Those were sacred moments of joy. And I had a sacred moment when we did our messy church this week, or this last week. This was my activity. It was an obstacle course. We were looking at care for the planet. And it was an obstacle course about treading lightly on the planet. And you can just see in the distance, there were some upturned flower pots. And the idea was that you could either just kick your way through the flower pots to get to the other side, or you could tiptoe around them very delicately, because they were the habitats of different creatures. And I was explaining this to a 3-year-old. Why do we do this? Why do I do this to myself? I was explaining this to a 3-year-old, Jonah, who had come to join in. And he looked at me and he looked at the flower pots and he said, "Are there creatures underneath?" And I said to his mum, "Oh, bother, I should have put creatures underneath. I should have got plastic animals." And she said, "No, I don't think you needed to. Jonah, what's under that flower pot?" And he looked at me and he looked at her and he said, "An elephant." And then he lifted up the next one, "A snake." And he went through all the flower pots with a different creature under each one. And it was a beautiful moment of the privilege of meeting that child's massive, unstoppable imagination. And both his mum and I and Jonah were grinning our heads off. We were meeting in the place of play, along with many, 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 many animals. So much going on. There is a very learned slide coming up with Graham, if you could just flick onto the next one. Yes. And this is just a little bit that I was looking at. Loads of you will know far more about the value of play than I do. This is just some of the thoughts about play from a sort of psychological view, I suppose. But play is good news. It's gospel. It can heal because it can sort out the neural pathways in our brains. It can release prisoners because it can help you develop flexible thought patterns. And it can help you see clearly again because playing gives you distance from your worries in the present. It helps us regain perspective. Play is pointless. There is no point in it. And what a glorious release that is from the gods of materialism and the things that we adults face far more than children. Being told that everything we do has to be worth it, has to be valuable in some way, has to earn money, has to gain us brownie points in some way. Play is pointless. It sets us free from all that. It's the ultimate spiritual act. It's the opposite of materialism. It's practice. It gives people a space to try out a new skill and to fail in a safe space. How important is that for us all? Watching the kids and the adults on Sunday experimenting with whether oranges float or sink when you put them in water with and without their skins, and risking saying the wrong answer. It was play. It was experimenting. It was learning, doing a new skill. I've said it before, but making time to play with somebody shows that you love them. It's saying you matter. It's saying your identity is important to us. It's saying you are a precious person in our sight and we're giving you our time and we're getting love back from you because you're giving us your time. So play is a way of showing somebody that you love them without needing to say it. Play can be flow, and that's been shown to be one of these mindfulness things that's really important in people's spiritual development, that you can get lost in the moment of creativity or spirituality, or it's just that moment where you're having such a good time that you lose track of where you are. And there are so few opportunities for that, especially when you're a grown-up. So play is important for that. It helps us communicate. Sometimes we can say what we need to say through play without words. And I think particularly for people where English is a second language, or where we're pre-literate, or where we just don't have enough words in our vocabulary yet, playing can express so much if the person playing with you is an observant person. It can help reduce stress. We've talked about that. It gives us all opportunities to be learners, which I think is a really good thing. We don't have to be the expert. We can play alongside people and not have to be in charge all the time. And perhaps most significantly for today, it's a space to connect. It doesn't matter what the relationship is between the various people involved in the activity. It's about a place to connect. There's a lovely slide coming up next, if Graham could just bring that up. Look at those people connecting in a pre-COVID way over the pigs in the story of the prodigal son and the slop there. Such a lot of connection going on, such closeness, such joining together of people of all sorts. And when we're playful, when we're creative, I think as well as all of that scientific brain stuff, I think there's something going on that reflects the playful, creative spirit of God alive in each of us. And I think that is an act of worship in itself. And I think it's an act of freedom and protest against a world that tells us that everything we do has to be worthy and be an extra point on our CV or get an extra rung up the promotion ladder. This is something gloriously liberating about just expressing who we are as created human beings, created in the image of God, to be creative in our turn. What a wonderful thing. There's so much going on, isn't there, in the activity time of a messy church. And that connectedness through play, it's not just for the activity time. If we allow it to, think how it can influence the way that we plan our messy church, the way that we do our meals, the way that we run the celebration. That connectivity and that freedom and that healing and that togetherness and that joy can bubble through every element of our messy church. And what's exciting, I think, is that where it bubbles up in our messy churches, that influences not just the messy church congregation, but the whole church. It overflows. It's like a shaken up bottle of Coke and you pour Mentos in and they explode all over. It's uncontainable, this creativity and this joy. It will bubble out into the rest of our church life, bringing people together in that spirit of joy. So, there was so much more I was going to do. There were so many pages, but I will finish just by saying that this garment of praise that we're offering people in our communities, this messy church that we're holding out to people, not to shove it over their necks and force them into it, but to offer them it as a free gift if they want to try it on for size. This isn't an off-the-peg fashion T-shirt, some tawdry thing that's been knocked up in a factory somewhere. This isn't something that looks tawdry once we've worn it once and the glitter falls off. This messy garment is a small reflection of the wonderful garment of praise that God holds out to all of God's people, to us included, and invites us to try on for size. It's robust. It's something worth investing in. It's reliable and it's very, very beautiful. So hang on to that word when people say to you, oh, messy church, it's just a bit of fun, isn't it? It's just entertainment. It's just froth and frills for the masses. As one UK bishop has been known to say, keep this in mind. He has anointed us to hold out a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. And your garment might be a vest of veneration. It might be a jacket of joy, a glove of gratitude, a beanie hat of blessing, an espadrille of exaltation. You can tell I've had fun with this. A sock of song. It could be any of these things, but whatever it is, for you, it's tailor-made for you and you alone. You can be sure that it's the right fit for you. And as we enjoy the other speakers today and over the rest of the weekend, let's hold on to God's invitation to deliberately take the garment of praise we've been offered and put it on over whatever's been going on in our lives. And as we've received it for ourselves, let's keep on finding new, playful, joyful ways to bestow on the families in our communities a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. Merci, miigwech, and thank you.